All right. Welcome to Exposing Sierra Leone, where we talk about all things pertaining to Sierra Leone on a weekly basis. Those of you who are getting your citizenship in Sierra Leone, those of you who are of Sierra Leonean descent, who plan on visiting Sierra Leone, this live stream is for you. Today, we are going to talk about the Sierra Leone Diaspora Investment Conference. What I really think about it. Was it worth the price of the tickets? But before we get into today's conversation, I want to know, can you guys hear me and where you guys are watching from? So first of all, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me and let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if you can hear me and where you're watching from. So I guess I see a bunch of people calling in from different parts of the country. I want to make sure I capture everyone. There's a lot scrolling through the screen. So, okay. So we got, is it Mefia? Mefia said you can hear me, but where are you watching from? Gail said you can hear me, but Gail, where are you watching from? Okay, we got the Insta Tourist watching from Savannah, Georgia. Kelvy is what it says. Audio is great, live from Colorado. Nice. William is watching from Ghana. Much love. Shout out to you, William. Vigilante Visuals says you can hear me. ATL soon to be in Sierra Leone. Nice. All right. Who else we have? Okay, we got is it Mefia is watching from Belgium. Phoenix, Arizona. Abdullah is watching from Phoenix, Arizona. All right. Olive Branch, Mississippi is where Barbara is watching from. Barbara, for real. All right, Barbara, shout out to you. What about you guys on TikTok? Where y'all watching from? Where are you guys watching from on TikTok? If you guys can see this setup, I got screens everywhere. I got a screen over here, screen over here, screen over here. But everybody let me know where you guys are watching from and if you can hear me. I need to hydrate. I just got back from Maryland today. It was a long weekend. Second weekend in a row in Maryland. And second weekend supporting Sierra Leoneans and being in part of a Sierra Leonean community. There was a lot of conversations had this weekend. The conference was definitely interesting. There was a lot of interesting viewpoints and discussions. I think it was really important to hear from people who were in attendance and to hear from the people that were on stage. A lot was said. And I definitely am looking forward to sharing it with you guys. And if it was worth it, right? I mean, that's the question that everybody asks me, right? Should I go to this conference? Is it worth it? You know, why would anybody ever go to a conference that's about investing in Sierra Leone, right? People ask me that all the time. Why would I go to a conference that is about investing in Sierra Leone? That's the number one question people ask me. People who are from Sierra Leone would say, why would we invest in Sierra Leone? Salon no bete, salon de bien. And so we heard from a lot of people. By the way, what that means is Salon isn't good. Sierra Leone is behind, right? But people all the time, they will discourage you from investing in Africa in general, and then specifically Sierra Leone in a post-Civil War environment, post-Ebola environment. People only think about those two things as it pertains to Sierra Leone. And so this conference is meant to dispel those myths. And I'll tell you if it was, or if it wasn't successful in doing so. And so I will start by just giving you the costs of the conference, because those of you who didn't go, you may not know this. And, you know, maybe you decided not to go because you saw the price and you thought it was not worth it. And so let me show you here and give you a little bit about what the conference was about, right? So first of all, here's what the ticket costs were. $225 for VIPs, $85 for regular admission, for the early admission, right? And then after the sale ended, it was $125. And then there was a $35 live stream cost if you watch live from wherever with the comfort of your own home. It was in Silver Spring, Maryland. Now let's talk about who was there and who was talking. So as you can see on the screen, you have quite a few people. You have here on the far left, upper left-hand corner, You had the ambassador, the Sierra Leone ambassador to the United States, all the way down to Drizzlick, who's one of our biggest artists in Sierra Leone, who performed at the BET Hip Hop Awards a couple of years ago, and all manner of people in between. Here was the agenda. It was a packed agenda. As you guys might know, I spoke on a panel. I was on this panel here, how African diaspora entrepreneurs can secure funding in a changing policy landscape. So I'll tell you about that in a little bit. These are some of the what do you call it? The sponsors of the event. And then the keynote speaker, Dr. Ibrahim Stevens, the governor of the Bank of Sierra Leone. This is like the central bank of Sierra Leone. This is who manages the currency, talking about currency remuneration, talking about remittance to Sierra Leone. There was a lot of discussions on that. Then, of course, the ambassador spoke, CEO of Anzac Tours and Resorts, Zaki spoke. So those were some of the keynote speakers. So there were a couple of keynote speakers that spoke throughout. And then, of course, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security spoke. And so this conference is run by Vicky Rameau, who I interviewed, and you guys will get a chance to see our interview and a tour of her office in Sierra Leone. She has a business that operates both in Sierra Leone and Ghana and in the diaspora, but she focuses on businesses on the continent for the most part. And so here is a closer look at some of the panelists. So very impressive story. This young guy right here, CEO of Rusal Group of companies, really impressive story. Lived on the street for a couple of years and has built a sustainable business. So really impressive story. Gerald was on my panel. So was Marie. And then also Mariama, the co-host, was also on my panel as well. And then, of course, here I am as a moderator for the panel that I was on. So again, that was the price. Vendors had the opportunity to to have their products shown off there. If you were a small, medium-sized enterprise, it's $1,200. If you were a small vendor, it was $350. So was it worth it? The question is, was it worth it? Now let's go through all of what was discussed, because I want to talk about what was discussed before I say whether or not I think it was worth it. Because I want to hear from you guys whether or not you would think this is worth it if you attended. So number one, my panel was specifically speaking to how to raise money for a small business. And there were conversations about locally or with banks, federally, and then there were non-traditional funding discussions. So the people that were on my bank was a former investment banker who now helps people get small business loans and loans for real estate. Another person is a fintech business owner, and another person worked for the Montgomery County association that handles and helps people with loans and education around business, right? And so our conversation was a wide-ranging conversation, and we talked about everything from how do you raise money, how has raising money been different than it had been previously, and the changing policy landscape, meaning with a new administration, how was it under the old administration versus the new administration, conversations about how to raise money outside of using government funds. There were discussions about how, you go to your local city council, and it's not just about the money that they give you, because it's not free money, right? A lot of times you'll get loans. Sometimes there are grants available. Most of the times they're loans. So you have to pay that money back. But two, it was like, what other advice can you be given? What do you need to know about the tax laws in your particular county? A lot of stuff that I don't think people just kind of take for granted and don't even really think about that kind of stuff, how it's required, or what's required and what's available to you, I should say. So that was specifically for those of us who live in the diaspora of African descent and we're looking to start businesses and raise money. I felt that particular panel, not just because I was on it and because I was the moderator of the panel, was a very informative panel. We talked about everything from Indiegogo to Kickstarter. So that's like crowdfunding. They talked about banks and how you should be going about getting money from banks, like bank loans. And they talked about how you should go about getting money from your local government and from the Small Business Association, the SBA. And I think it was a really impactful session. We did as much as we could within an hour. And the main thing to walk away with was, what website should you go to do more research on where you can find that funding. And I think they did a great job. So number one, let me just say, I think we kicked it off with a great panel. We also, of course, had a Muslim prayer and a Christian prayer, because it's not Sierra Leone if you don't have both, right? There was a welcome address from Vicky. She kind of spoke to what it was that this was and why we're doing it. I also thought the host did a really good job of talking about the fact that if you are there in person and you did not walk away with at least one new contact, then you failed, right? Or that they failed. And I will say that if you didn't, really, it's on you, because, this is an event where everybody is open to talking to each other. Everybody's open to talking to each other, and they're open to, figuring out how do we work together to build our own businesses and also advance each other. So let me show you. Actually, you know what? I'll go to that in a second. So that's the first thing, right? So that was those were the panels that I was on. And let me walk you through some of the other panels and like what I learned from those panels, and then what else I got outside of what I learned from those particular panels. Sorry, I got a hole in my window, and so I got some visitors I got to handle. So a visitor, I handled it. Gone. Dismissed. All right. So let's go back to the site. I want to show you guys the site again and get through like some of what we went through, because I think it's like, because it's not enough for me to just kind of give you an overview. I should break it down individually. So how African diaspora entrepreneurs can secure funding. We just talked about that. Then beyond profit, social impact business models that work in Sierra Leone. So on this panel, we heard from a number of different people. So on this panel, we heard from, who do we hear from? So we heard from Dr. Fatou Forna, who has the Mama Pekin Foundation. We heard from Aminata Doumbaya, who has the Freetown Waste Transformers. Mama Pekin Foundation is an interesting foundation because they are helping to do residency for OBGYNs and doctors, for sure. This is like super important in Sierra Leone, considering the child mortality rate for Sierra Leone and how it had been amongst the highest in history. And when she started this organization, there were only eight OBGYNs in the entire country. And now she just had 8 go through one residency at one point in time. So you had 8 in the entire country. She had 8 in one residency class. So I would definitely say what she had to say was super impactful. Aminata Doumbaya was talking about Freetown Waste Transformers and how what she did to start this business was just based on the fact that like the streets was blocked with garbage at one point in time. Like you couldn't drive down certain streets without having to drive around garbage on the streets. And so she worked with the mayor of Freetown to have a process where it's a policy now that you have to dispose of your garbage. It was never a policy prior to that, or hadn't been in the last 15 years at least. And I'm trying to think of who else was on that panel. Yes, and Ali Kamanda, who is helping with raising funds for individuals and microloans for individuals who need funding in Sierra Leone. And so that was his platform and what he talked about. And I thought it was super important and really helpful to hear what their businesses are doing and why they're impactful. a couple of things that I walked away from that panel with was, look, not every business you do on the continent is going to be a widely successful in terms of revenue business, right? Some businesses are going to have to be more about impact. And I think what I was hearing from these folks is, you're going to have to partner in some cases, especially if it's an impact business, with the government, or you're just going to have to raise funding from folks who have more of a philanthropic eye towards how they're doing business in a country like Sierra Leone, because we really, really need it. We come from a country, or we're talking about a country that is underdeveloped in the developing world, that has many challenges. And it's really important that we spend a significant amount of time working to, at the very least, not only think about profit, but think about the benefiting the country as a whole, benefiting our people as a whole. So I thought that was really important. It was interesting to kind of hear their viewpoint on how they go about running those businesses, and what it looks like when you have a business like theirs. Sorry, I wasn't on the screen, but I guess you guys can see me now. So that was a really important panel, and I think I learned a lot from that, because I have a nonprofit, Launchpad Africa, where we focus on helping entrepreneurs in Sierra Leone, and it's a nonprofit, right? And so I'm on the board of the nonprofit. There's 4 of us on the board, and 4 co-founders to the nonprofit, and our goal is to help founders become investment ready, and also help people who are coming to Sierra Leone who want to start a business, understand do market research, and a number of other things. I mean, we have a long list of things that we do, but it was important for me to hear from these folks who have come before us. And one of the interesting things I heard that was said is, those of us who are moving to the continent for the first time, we assume we're the first ones. We assume we're the only ones to do a thing, right? So many times people will go there and be like, oh, I'm going to start the first blah, 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 the first co-working space. I'm going to start the first garbage cleanup company. I'm going to start the first refrigeration company. None of these things are hardly ever the first. You just may not know very well the other companies that are doing many of these things. And so one of the things that came up is, getting advice from people who are already doing it, partnering sometimes with folks that are doing it. So Dominion is asking, when and where was this conference? Sierra Leone is beautiful. So the conference was in Silver Spring, Maryland, this past Friday, August the 7th or the 8th, whatever, this past Friday. It's Sunday the 10th. So Saturday's the 9th, Friday's the 8th. So yeah, it was the 8th. So David says, the troublesome part is that overall commerce, whether wholesale or not, always led to the accumulation of wealth depending on the actual products that are offered within the market. I'm not sure I understand exactly what you mean, but Dominion says, lovely, love to connect with you and some folks. What's your website? You can shoot an email to my email if you guys want to reach out to me directly. My email is here. It'll be scrolling across the bottom. All right, so that panel was great, because the social impact business models, these are ones where there's a philanthropic element, but it is a for-profit business. And in each of these instances, they had businesses that were not only, doing well for yourself, but doing good for the country. And that's what I believe businesses on the continent should be doing. Everybody else outside of us, right? People who watch these live streams, people who have these conversations in your own side daily lives, you guys, we all care about Africa and its advancement and helping it get back to its rightful place on the world stage, right? And in this case specifically, we're talking about Sierra Leone. Many of the people on the continent who have businesses who are not of African descent are there to extract resources for their own personal gain. That's all they're there for, right? So they're there to extract mineral resources. They're there to extract human resources. They're there to extract the mental capacity of individuals and their workload. And it really is a new form of indentured servitude. I'm not going to say it's slavery, because technically people are getting paid, but they're not getting paid a livable wage. and the people who are benefiting are not of African descent. And then what also happens is that many people of African descent living on the continent, they continue to operate the way those foreigners operate on our land, right? So when other people come in and they treat their workers poorly, you'll find that then Africans start to mimic that behavior with their own employees and their own workers. So you have these foreigners that that require their workers to do certain things in order to get jobs. You guys can figure out what I mean by that. And then you have Sierra Leonean business owners that are starting to do the same thing, or you hear this in other countries. And this is why another example needs to be led. And so what I thought what was important about this conference is you had people that were serious about changing the lives of the people back home. You know, and that's why I think this panel was so important, beyond profit, social impact business models. The Minister of Agriculture spoke, lots of great things to say. I didn't catch all of it because I was out running around networking with a bunch of different folks. And then the next panel, which talked about transforming raw products into profitable agricultural goods, lots of great discussions there about farming. Those of you who are thinking about buying land in Africa and farming and living off the land, this would have been the perfect one for you. These are real businesses that are making real money. Farming is a very big business on the continent of Africa, and Sierra Leone in particular is a ripe environment for farming. Our rainy season makes it, and our fertile ground. By the way, we don't use fertilizer. They don't use any of insecticides, pesticides, none of that. It's 100% organic, everything that's growing in country, right? So the food tastes better, looks better, lasts longer than the food that you buy here in the United States. I would tell you that off the rip. Ask anybody who eats the fruits and vegetables that grow out of the ground in Sierra Leone. It just tastes better because it's organic. It's not genetically modified, and the ground doesn't have all kinds of nasty stuff in it to help the food grow. It already just grows from the way the soil is. So this was a great conversation, opened my eyes up and gave me a network to go talk to, because, you know, I have 5 acres of land and I want to farm on that land and I didn't know what to do with that land. And now I have critical things that I can do to help me understand what I can do there. Next, we had a panel on leveraging global opportunities in the African creative economy. On that panel, you had Drizzlick, who is in one of the pictures I was showing before. But you had Drizzlick on that panel. He's one of our artists from Sierra Leone. Okay, here we go. We had Drizzlick on that panel. We had Jamila from, I think maybe she's going to be down here. Jamila from BET on that panel. So she works in marketing at BET. So that was great to hear from her. And who else was on that? So this is Jamila here. So she was on that panel. Who else was on that panel? No, it's escaping me whoever else was on that panel, but it was really, really impactful because I think there was a lot of conversation about how, as Africans, number one, I think we need to do a better job of seeing the creative industry as a viable industry and one that we should support. It should no longer be doctor, lawyer, engineer, right? You should support folks who want to work in all forms of entertainment and creatives, right? Because being a creative doesn't necessarily mean it's just entertainment, but, you know, the creative arts and the creative industries, super important. One of the discussions that Drizzlick mentioned is, why isn't there a place for artists to perform? Like, so he came to DC, he performed at the Howard Theater 2 years in a row, right? That's one of many. Here in New York City, you have many different places that you can perform. When Ruger and Ira Starr, those of you who know who they are, they're big artists. Ira Starr is signed to Maven Records. She just got a deal with Rock Nation, right? So they have a joint deal with Maven Records, Rock Nation. When she and Ruger came to Sierra Leone to perform, they had to perform at Sugarland Beach. They had to perform on the beach because the stadium wasn't fixed and ready to perform in, and there was no other place for them to perform. Now, they had a big audience. Some people say 45,000 people came to watch them perform, and there was nowhere for them to perform except on the beach. That is a problem. Then you think about someone like Drizzlick, where he said some of his shows might have 10, 15,000 people, right? Where can he perform where he can fit 10 to 15,000 people, right? There isn't a location for that. So he mentioned that, and I think it was really important. And then the other thing he said was this, you know, one of the things we hear a lot from people who are Sierra Leonean is how they're proud to talk negatively about Sierra Leone. He mentioned that as an artist who speaks about Sierra Leone, the what life is like in Sierra Leone, and he's exporting that to the world. And you guys saw that in the interview that I did with him. And if you haven't seen it, go back and check it out. Last week, Wednesday, I did the behind the scenes of the performance he did at Howard Theater a couple weeks ago. And then the previous Wednesday before that, I posted the interview that he and I had. And he tells the story of a Sierra Leonean, what it's like to be in Sierra Leone. He doesn't pretend to be Nigerian or speak about what it's like in the UK or the US, even though he's traveled to these places. He talks about what life is like in Sierra Leone, and he's exporting an Afro-fusion sound, a Creole fusion sound from Sierra Leone out to the world. And I think it's really important for people to hear our stories from our people. And it's done through music by him. And I thought it was a great panel to hear what it's like for him as a creative to hear people talk about how they don't listen to Sierra Leonean artists, right? And then negatively talking about it and being proud to talk about that. And for him to be someone, I mean, who makes music for about Sierra Leone, for Sierra Leoneans and for the world. And then to hear Sierra Leoneans say they don't like the music or they don't listen to it, they don't support it, you know, was interesting. And he talked about how he did the BET cipher and his metaphors and his similes and his rhyme scheme was all in Creole, our local language in Sierra Leone. And then the comments underneath it for the BET Hip Hop Award cipher from Sierra Leoneans is, why would you do it in Sierra Leone's local language? From Sierra Leoneans. So this conference was big on helping us change the narrative, reframing how we look at things. Because again, Chinese, Lebanese, Indian, Filipino, I know one or more of people in each of those nationalities that are in Sierra Leone right now that have businesses, right? Multiple people from, that are Chinese, multiple people that are Lebanese. Now, there are a lot of Lebanese who've been in Sierra Leone for over 100 years. There's a long history of Lebanese there. But still, these are not indigenous Sierra Leoneans. And indigenous Sierra Leoneans are not the ones who are building businesses. Everybody's leaving the country and not coming back to build the country. And trust me, it is absolutely worth it. So at this point in time, this far into it, 30 minutes in, I will say it was absolutely worth the money to go to the conference. If you can't get that already, it was worth it. Because if you just stand around and listen to people who negatively talk about Sierra Leone, you're missing out on your opportunity to be able to generate an income, to do good and to do well, right? To do well for yourself and to do good for the people of Sierra Leone. You're missing out on your opportunity because you're allowing other people to frame it for you instead of going out and doing it yourselves. Now, Vigilante Visuals is asking, were those individuals considering moving to the continent? There were many folks who are already on the continent. So the first panel was all people who are only in Sierra Leone. Well, sorry, the first panel, no, that was my panel. Those were diasporans. The second panel were people who only their businesses operate in Sierra Leone. And two of the three of them live in Sierra Leone full time. One of them, he goes back and forth, but he has a business. And others mention that they go back and forth all the time. I'm not going to go through every single one of the panels because we could be here all day talking about it, but I just wanted to give you at least those couple of panels and how important those were. So now let's say you thought to yourself, I don't really want to go listen to a panel. I go to conferences all the time. I don't always listen to panels. The most important thing that you go to a conference for is networking, not just the panels. These are very impressive people. And these are people who might be doing the things that you want to do, right? Those are the people those of you who are watching this live stream, right? I'm sure many of you are thinking about investing on the continent, maybe buying real estate, maybe starting a business, maybe eventually moving or retiring to the continent. Wouldn't it have been good to meet people who are already doing that can tell you what landmines to dodge, what pitfalls to dodge, what hurdles you'll have to climb, shortcuts to getting to the path that you want to get to? You know, the reason why many people complain is because they try to do these things in silos by themselves without the assistance of others. And that creates an environment where people end up being jaded and upset with the results that they're unable to achieve because they tried to do it alone. One of the sayings that was said here and that gets said all the time, which is super important, right? It's an African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. And when it comes to Africa, if you want to go fast, you can go fast to nowhere. So be very clear. But if you want to go far, go together. By the way, I added some stuff to there. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. You absolutely should be talking to other people who have achieved what it is that you're looking to achieve, who are doing what it is that you want to do, who are in the place that you want to move. You should not be doing this on your own. Africa is a vast continent with 53 or 54 countries, depending on who you ask, maybe even 55 at this point, you know, how they split up the countries. Some don't get recognized, some get do, whatever, some do. But right now, 54 recognized countries, and with the Federation, the AES, we might say 51. With that many countries, every country has its nuances. Within each country has its many nuances. But wouldn't it be good to talk to someone who already has the experience that you're looking to obtain? You know, I heard once that a fool learns from their own mistakes. A wise person learns from others. You have people who've already gone through it, so you don't have to. I built this platform to help you guys know what I've been through, so you can know how to dodge certain things. I do consulting with folks to help people know what makes sense, what might be a viable business, what's a good idea, what's not a good idea. Or I can help them do some research or talk to some people who I know on the continent who have advice and insight that I can pass on to you. Imagine you had 100 other people in a room that you could talk to, regardless of your background and regardless of the industries that you want to get into. Everybody was represented there, literally everybody. So I recommend 100%, if you haven't before, you go to conferences like this. You know, the Sierra Leone Diaspora Investment Conference is important for Sierra Leoneans and people who are interested in Sierra Leone for sure. But there are other conferences too that are important for the broader diaspora and other parts of the continent of Africa, right? So, but I think you should be paying attention to all of these things. So, you know, instead of complaining, get going to places like this. I'm building a house right now. I'm frustrated with certain things that are going on. But you know what happened? I got advice from someone else on what to do and how to do it, so that I am a little bit more patient and I understand some of the pitfalls and some of the challenges that come along with building a house. So even though, you know, I had to fire 3 contractors throughout the process, and you guys are going to get a chance to see that on my YouTube channel. I'm going live every Sunday. I just posted one video today, about 3 hours ago, that spoke specifically to what it was like building the concrete wall, or what we call a fence, around our property. But that came from conversations with people on the continent, in places, in spaces like this, right? And so I definitely recommend it 100%. It's absolutely worth it to go to a conference like this for the networking element. You know, I met the Sierra Leone ambassador to the United States, who just got that $480 million MCC contract from the president of the US, who, by the way, has a ban on travel to Sierra Leone, who has obviously stopped giving aid, but somehow this gentleman was able to convince the president of the United States to give this $480 million contract. Now, some people might say, why do we need aid from the United States? Why do we want their money? You know, it comes with stipulations, et cetera, et cetera. All fair points. All fair points. At the end of the day, this was money that was already earmarked for Sierra Leone, and it was already planned to go to Sierra Leone, and it was canceled, but reignited. So we'll see if that money does go to Sierra Leone and what good it plays in the advancement of the country. But yes, so he was there and he spoke. We had a long discussion outside. Well, not a long discussion, but we talked for a while outside. He's familiar with the family, because, I think I mentioned before, my grandfather was a chief and his children went to Bow School and he went to Bow School and many of his team had gone there. But yeah, it was, I would say, a very, very, very good conference. And it gets better every year. I thought last year was important for networking as well. And I think this year was a step above, right? It gets better every year because now that, she's been around and she continues to do it, I think other people decide that they want to come through and participate and show up. Now, there are many folks who come and, they're just there to have fun. But for me, it was about networking. So let me show you what I did on the bus on the way back. So I took the bus. I don't always recommend taking a bus from DC to New York, but I took the bus because I just did. It was the Vamoose bus. Good one. So let me show you this. Now you can see here, I'm not even done yet. 2 people from the embassy, the ambassador, right? His name's here. I've hid the contact information because this is public and I don't think they want their contact information public. They gave me their business cards, but I have a long list of business cards here and, people running for office. I got business cards. Well, I guess you can't really see it, but I got a bunch of business cards. I don't want to show the contact information. Oh, here we go. I got a bunch of business cards, as you can see, and then I exchanged numbers with a bunch of people. So this isn't even everybody. This was just from the business cards that I have. And then I also exchanged just information with folks live, and I added it. And what I do after a conference, which I recommend all of you do, is you create a list of people who you met, where you met them, and with notes. I also hid my notes too on what we're going to talk about. But many of these folks I plan to have on this live stream to talk about their experience and what they're doing and sharing that with you all. Right. So that's a plan. That's number 1. Number 2, I have personal outreach that I need to do with these folks, whether they're going to be on a live stream, whether we're going to interview them, or there are going to be other discussions. But there is a lot coming, and I 100% will tell you, this is how you follow up after a conference. Me, I don't play around when it comes to networking. I don't go to a conference. I'm not going to spend money to go to a conference and just sit down and listen to people talk. I'm going to gain as much as I can from what I'm hearing there, and then I am going to go and introduce myself to people and meet people. And that's what I did. So this is just a small list of the people that I met and talked to. This is probably double this in terms of numbers that I put into my phone or put into WhatsApp and meetings that I have scheduled. But I absolutely recommend that you don't just go to a conference, but you do this. You organize yourself, you organize the contacts and your contacts, and you go back and you check to see where your progress is. Now you can use something like Salesforce or HubSpot to really, really check progress, or you could just do it here where you can just have like next steps, recent updates, whatever, as columns where you put that information in there. But I just want to give you like a quick snapshot of what I did. This is how I keep track of everybody that I meet. And I would tell you right now, this is something I've been doing since I started going to networking events 20 years ago. And you will not believe the impact that this has had on my life doing this kind of thing. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys. There was a lot there. And I have a meeting to attend with one of the people that I met in Bed-Stuy. So I'll be heading out in the next 10 minutes or so. So I just want to say, first of all, those of you who stuck with the live stream and who watched along with, I appreciate you guys. Hopefully you found this useful and helpful. I definitely recommend next year you attend this conference. If you're stateside, even if you're not, it's worth it. And then other conferences. So later this month, I'll be attending in about 12 days. Actually, I can't believe it's that quick. In about 12 days, I'll be attending the InvestFest conference in Atlanta, Georgia. In October, I'll likely be attending Afrotech in Houston, Texas. And then there's an event in February, next February, that I know of at Harvard that talks about investment across the continent of Africa. So these are the places that you can expect to see me. I'll be telling you about them if you don't go. But I expect to see you all there too. You know, this is my call to action to you all, is to, if you're here watching these live streams and you're watching these videos as replays, then you're obviously someone who cares about what's happening on the continent, who's looking to build a future there. If that's what you're looking to do, don't think you're just going to do this in a silo all alone by yourself without a network. And especially if you're just in the beginning stages, go hear from people who are in the process, who've been there 20 years, who've been there 30 years, right? Some of the people who talked on stage have been in Africa working on businesses for 20 plus years. They have so much insight and knowledge that you can gain from. It makes absolutely no sense to not go listen to them speak and go meet them and talk to them personally. So that's my call to action to you all. So for all of you who are saying, was it worth it? I don't think it's worth it. I would never go to an investment conference about Africa or investment about Sierra Leone. Okay. All right. That's your choice. That's always your choice. But I would tell you, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. It's super important to go to these kinds of events. I learned a lot. I met a lot of great people, and I look forward to expanding on those relationships and business partnerships and sharing all of that with you guys in the future. Lenore is saying thank you, Lenore, for joining. Appreciate you. And Lenore has given me some life advice throughout the time that I've known her. And Lenore is moving to Ghana later this year, so you know, she has a story to tell as well. All right, guys. Well, I want to say thanks again for watching. As always, if you haven't already, share this with anybody you know who's ever considered going to the Sierra Leone Diaspora Investment Conference or any conferences on the continent. Anybody who's ever considered going to any kinds of conferences like this, definitely share this with them. If you yourself need a refresher on anything that I said, you know, make sure you save this link, go back and watch it again. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you're notified every time a new video comes out. And that's on both pages, right? So we're live on Sierra Leoneans Killing It on Instagram. We're live on Authentic African on Instagram. And then we're live across all Authentic African, everything across the board. And Sierra Leoneans Killing It YouTube. Cross-pollinate. Go over to Sierra Leoneans Killing It to see what she's got going on and how she highlights Sierra Leoneans. Come over to Authentic African if you're on the other pages to come subscribe to our platform. And with that, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you all on the next live stream. Oh, I'll see you guys tomorrow. See you guys tomorrow on the live stream. I will be live tomorrow to talk about something. You'll see what it is when we're live tomorrow. All right, guys. See ya.